I wasn't sure the little one knew who I was, and as it got closer, it might cry out in fear, and then Big Daddy would charge down that trail and break me in half. Osio Nagad, Dohiju, Rick Taylor, Dawado. Hello, folks. How are you? Rick Taylor is my name. I'm a mixed blood tribal member with the Cherokee Nation. I'm very proud of the native blood that my full blood grandmother and mixed blood grandfather gave me. But having said that, I'm equally proud of the Scots, Irish, Dutch, and German that flow through my veins. I can't be anybody but me, and I love this opportunity to share. I remember in 1967 when the Patterson-Gimlin film came out. I was a young adolescent. I remember it first airing on channel, I believe it was 47 in Fresno, showing this tall, hairy figure walking into the woods. I remember the hair standing up on my neck. I mean, it looked real to me. For a time, I was fascinated with Bigfoot. Spent my life in the Sierra Nevadas hunting, fishing, and camping, but never seeing anything really substantial. And growing up, college and marriage and several decades of mature adult life, I kind of forgot about it until I retired from the city of Houston and moved to the Dallas area and had my 15-year-old son with me. We were night fishing. Had excellent father and son time, and we'd usually fish all night sometimes. We had gone to a place that I was later told was too close to a metropolitan area to have Bigfoot activity, but nonetheless, we're out there fishing. Had got out there about 8 o'clock at night. It was well past midnight at some point, and I began to be aware of something moving in the brush north of us. Now, I had my pickup parked into this, probably a 60-foot wide creek. A little side slough ran in perpendicular to our right, was about 20 feet wide. So I had water on two sides of us and a big parking area next to us. I was just aware of something moving in the foliage, slowly making its way closer to us. Wasn't concerned. You have armadillo, fox, coyotes, animals foraging, and didn't think too much of it till I started getting this nervous feeling of being watched. At that point, I got up, I put my pole down, got the Q-beam spotlight out of the pickup, and I began to scan that brush line, I'd say about 100 feet away from us with a bright Q-beam. Wasn't expecting to see anything, but at some point in that bright circle of light panning, I momentarily picked up a facial shape. Now, it wasn't projecting out of the foliage, but that light's bright enough to penetrate the gaps in the leaves. And by the time it registered, I'd already passed the facial shape, and I snapped the light back. I couldn't locate it. Well, my son saw me jerk, and he goes, "Dad, what are you doing?" And I didn't want to tell him, I think there's somebody over there. I just said, oh, just looking, and I put the light down, and I got back down in my seat. And at that point, I was more aware of that direction. Of course, I scanned the parking area and the perimeter around us. At times, fishermen have been rolled and robbed and, assaulted by different people. And so I was aware. I want to say not less than 5 minutes, not more than 10, a faint swish caught my attention, and as I turned back that direction, I just had a dim Coleman lantern on the tailgate, not anything bright, but I could see this grayish object arcing out of that brush line and heading our direction, and I just kind of stopped trying to digest what's going on, and at that point, the object landed about 5 feet in the water in front of us by that bank. And I'm not talking a softball. It was like a 50-pound child doing a cannonball off the high dive. I mean, it was a whoosh. And I fell back in my chair, startled. My son dropped his pole. He grabbed me. and screaming with his eyes real wide, "Dad, what was that?" And I'm pulling him back, and I'm thinking, "What was that?" And I'm seeing these big waves fan out. And at that point, I knew it was large. It had a bit of mass to it. If it had hit us, could have killed or injured us, seriously. So I pull him back. I had a little 380 in my fishing pocket, little 380 auto. Forget that. I ran over to the truck and got my 357 out, under the seat. And I yelled at him, or whoever, might be over there. I said, "That's not funny." I said, "I do have a gun. If you throw something again, I just may shoot back." And me being retired law enforcement, which I could explain later, I honorably was armed, but I was mad. Somebody's jacking with us. We're in open land. We're minding our own business. Nobody, and somebody was messing with us. So I got as close to that little side slew as I could. I cocked the Model 66 back, single action, and a 357 without ear protection's loud. So I turned away and plugged one ear, and my son he knew what I was going to do. I fired a round off into the ground, and it was a loud boom. Immediately, directly on the other side of this slough, I don't know, a hunter would understand what I'm talking about. You jump a big buck or an elk or a moose or a horse, they don't ease through brush, they crash through brush. And the moment that gun went off, a baby bulldozer took off, snapping limbs, crushing bushes, a lot of mass to it, and it didn't slow down. I mean, it till it faded out, it was moving at a high rate of speed. And my son and I looked at each other, and jaws wide open. He goes, "Dad, what was that?" I said, "I don't know, son, but let's go." So that was my first what in the world was that moment, and it fueled me, first of all, to seek answers in that waterway area where I eventually had my first visual sighting. And I knew they existed and walked among us. I had networked with several people looking for answers after my rock throwing. Well, I say it's a rock. I don't know what it was. Could have been a dirt clod, could have been a cinder block. I began to go to different conferences and stuff, and I met Arla there in Honeby, and or Hanobi, whichever way you want to pronounce it. And some of her stories were pretty incredible at the time. I don't say that I did not believe them, but they were really, I mean, it was far more than just a dumb primate running around out in the woods on her regards to them. And over time, and my epiphany came at Arliss, I wanted more answers, and people had told me she had a lot of activity around her land. So I called her when I looked on Facebook and saw she was hosting this drum making workshop. I said, "Look, I'll pay the entry fee, but I'm not interested in making any drums. I want to go, cruise around on your land." She said, "I don't have any problem with that. You're welcome to come." So I basically set up there, and people had trailers and were camping at her property. And I was out to video or visually see these subjects, and I spent 2 days lurking around in the woods, hooting, clapping my hands, listening for activity, and I basically was run ragged. I would hear something, and as many of these Bigfoot programs do, I took off racing that direction to try to capture, or see. And I didn't know I was spinning my wheels. You're not going to see them unless they want you to. And after 2 days of frustration and running around day and night, I found myself at the end of a logging access road west of her property. And I was frustrated. I had my tailgate down. I was sitting on the tailgate of my pickup and just kind of trying to figure where I wanted to go to from here, because I wasn't having much success. And I guess out of frustration, I just started speaking out very loudly in this wooded area by myself. I said, "Look, I'm just here to see you. I'm not going to hurt you. I just want to see you up close. Not a glimpse, but up close. What had happened that earlier that day that added to my frustration is there were a couple ladies there that did the workshop, and they had gone out for a lunch break stroll, and one of them captured a side peeker. They were sitting on some rocks, and they came in at lunch gushing that they had seen one. And folks, I had spent 2 days trying to see one, and these people inadvertently go out and it wasn't fair, okay? It wasn't fair. So that added to my frustration. So anyway, I'm out there at the end of this road at night. It's after dark. And I just go through just this little discourse. I want to see you up close. And then one of the people there knew where my location was, and he was coming down the road. He on the walkie-talkie, which I maintained, contact with them back at Arla's house. He said, "Rick, I'm coming down the road right now." I said, "Okay, I'm here. I'm not going anywhere." When he got up to me, he said, "There was something moving north away from you." And I said, "Well, I kind of thought so." And I just said, "I was out here and he had told me, talk to them. They understand you." I didn't think anybody heard me. I knew I'd being watched. So the next day, I did get one video of one in the brush. I didn't see it clearly at the time because I was holding a little RCA small wonder camera, my jury-rigged monocular telephoto, and all I'm looking at is a 1x1 LED screen without my reading glasses on. So it was very hard at the time for me to make out what I had captured there, although I did get about a 15-second brief video. I didn't even see the subject till later reviewing my video, so really I didn't see one live. It was after the fact. But that night we had a Native American drum making ceremony, or at least the drums that were made were included in a Native American fireside service. A lot of Native customs, and I probably participated in about half of them. And then, as my usual mode, I would retreat from the group. I would go out of the clear cut into the wooded areas one direction, and I would stop. I'd scan with my night vision to make sure I wasn't being followed. And I purposely would position myself. I'd move through the woods where if anybody in the group or a third party observing us, they would have to follow me to know where I had wound up. Because I would move quietly and very subtly. I would stop. I would scan and pan with the night vision to make sure I wasn't inside or being viewed by anybody. I got to a good position where I could see the drum making service going on out there in the clear cut area with the fire, and in the tree line where Arla said they would probably come to watch the ceremony if they did. And my intent there was to capture them coming out of the wood line. And at some point, maybe 15, 20, 30 minutes later, I saw a figure coming out of the tree line. I got real excited, started videoing, and wound up being Arla, the landowner. I recognized her, and she wasn't returning back to where the fireside service was, but she was coming directly towards me. And I was hidden. If you'd have to have good night vision and know exactly where I was to even know I was there. And I stayed hunkered down, and I thought, well, she doesn't know where I am. She made a beeline straight towards me, and as she walked up, I stood up and I said, "Arla, how did you know I was here?" And she said, "They told me you were here." And you got to understand, I'm still a little bit skeptical here, but I'm thinking in my mind, that's a pretty good trick. That's if it isn't the truth, to fabricate this is pretty good. But what blew me away was the next statement. I knew I had made that statement, different location. There wasn't anybody around, or I was reasonably certain there wasn't anybody. And she looked at me and she said, "Do you want to go see them?" The question dovetailed in with my statement the night before. not impossible, but highly unlikely. That really blew me away. I'm thinking, whoa, you know, they told you this because, a lot of people believe they're just dumb animals that have no, intellect nor cognitive thinking. So I'm thinking in my mind, this is pretty good. And I said, yeah, I'd like to go see them. We walked back to the gathering of folks. Arla said she was going to take me to her special meeting place, that she meets with them there. And nobody follow. It's just her and I. And we go up to I want to say 30, 40 acres of clear. We were on the north side. It was a little bit of a walk, several hundred yards from the fireside location. And in that corner, there was, around that clear cut was a game fence, about 5.5 feet tall, wood slats and wooden posts. And we walked up to it, and I kind of leaned on the fence, and she started calling various names out loud. And it wasn't but just a short period of time, I began to hear heavy footfall movement coming from a creek on the other side of that fence, maybe a couple hundred yards, but I could hear the dry leaves crackling and the brush of bushes and everything due east of us. And then I start hearing more footfall and noise coming from the northeast, and then more from the south, at least 3 different directions. Could have been more, but a lot of activity. And I'm looking for flashlight glimmer, some kind of light source in that near pitch dark. It was about a 2/3 moon. In the clear cut area, I didn't have any problem seeing things, but in that thick canopy, it was almost pitch black. And I thought, if this is a group tricking me, they're doing a pretty good job. Going in thick foliage at night in Oklahoma is not at the top of the list of my things to do with the snakes and different things out there. And it'd be going pretty elaborate. And all of that movement came up to within about 10 feet of breaking out of that foliage. And the foliage was about 10 feet beyond the game fence. So about 20 feet away, whoever or whatever was in the thick brush came to a stop. And it sounded very real. It sounded very big. And at that point, I wanted to try to get a look. Now, Arla had told me they do not like anything held up to your face. Cameras, lights, scopes, or anything. I had my night vision in a holster. I asked her, can I use my night vision? And I don't know if she was conversing with them, but she says, yeah, go ahead, because she had told me don't use that unless I ask her. And so I pulled it out, tried to fire it up. It was a new scope, folks. It would not work. It would not energize and come on. I jiggled the switch. I even adjusted the everything, and it wouldn't come on. I tried that twice, and I said, Arla, my scope's not working. And then she smiled and she says, try it now. And the scope came right on. And needless to say, folks, I was a little bit spooked. My first thought is, this woman a witch or something? And the second was, if people were pranking with me to affect electronics like that, they've got to be very good. Beyond my understanding. So that was my first kind of off balance. Well, other than Arla asking if you want to go see them. Now my mind's trying to digest, how did that happen? And then Arla looked at me, says, do you want to go inside now and see them? Whatever was in there was big. I'm not sure what it was, and I don't do vulnerable very well. And if Arla would have been a man, I probably would have said, no, I'm good. But she was a lady, and my testosterone pride would not let me wimp out in front of a woman. I'm serious, folks. I was pretty nervous and confused a little bit. I wasn't in my comfort zone. And when I said yes, she said, well, let's go in. We went through the gate. We turned back to the right, and I could hear following movement in the brush. Something was paralleling us. We got back to a break in this thick canopy and brush. It was a well-traveled trail, very narrow, but enough for both of us to walk through. and the lower foliage was probably waist to chest high on both sides of me. Some of it may have been taller in areas. But when we turned into that trail and stepped out of that 2/3 moon in the open meadow, it went very much pitch dark. I could barely see her head, and I was scared that I didn't want to lose her, so I was right on her 6 o'clock, man. I was in her personal space right behind her because she was their friend, and I didn't want to get far from that. And I was hearing crackling and moving and snapping on both sides of us. All I did is I looked at her head and did some praying. I mean, I was in their house, and I was scared. I don't mind telling you, I was very apprehensive and scared. And I just followed her maybe 100, 200 yards in. There was a trail that ran into that trail at a perpendicular angle. We made a left and went about maybe 50 feet into about a 30-foot diameter clear-cut area that even went up, even above the sky was open there, and the moonlight just kind of illuminated that meeting area. There were 2 folding chairs. I know she had cornmeal on a string. The reason she kept it above ground is the varmints would get the goodies. She would gift them with cornmeal, I think peanut butter, just some goodies, and it was her gifting and meeting place. We were surrounded by activity, and at that point when we came to a stop, I was kind of casually, subtly looking, but not sure what I would see. While standing there, as clear as I'm speaking to you, the words, expression, the thought, very clear, said, "Why are you carrying a gun?" And being honorably retired law enforcement, if I go out in the woods, folks, I'm carrying a large bore handgun. It saved my life one time in the woods. That habit, it's a tool. And when that word came through my head, I kind of freaked out. I'd never had an experience like that. And my thought to myself was, Rick, you're losing it. You're hearing voices in your head. I was double checking myself because I'd never experienced anything that clear and profound. And I tried to ignore it. And whoever was speaking to me knew I was trying to ignore it. And the profound volume or intensity, or it was cranked up the squelch was cranked up 10 times, And the words repeated, "Why are you carrying a gun?" And the second time it went through my head, I knew they're talking to me. And I don't know how I answered. It wasn't just a thought. It was an articulation back to them. And I often think maybe we had this primal ability as a people years back in clans and tribal groups. And, we've lost it. Don't know, don't have any final conclusions there, but I answered that voice and I said, it's a tool of protection that I carried on my job. I've carried it around my close friends and family. I've never hurt them with it, and I will not hurt you now. And at that point, the voice said, "Step away from Arla." Hey, I was in law enforcement. Step away. Something's fixing to happen. I don't know if it's good, bad, or ugly, but it was probably one of the hardest things. I looked over at Arla and I said, "Arla, they're telling me to move away from you." And there was not an ounce of surprise or expression on her face. She just warmly smiled at me and she said, do what they tell you to do, And I will say that's probably one of the hardest few steps I've ever taken, because she was their friend. I didn't know what I was encountering. It was like I was stepping off the edge of the Grand Canyon or something. I had no idea what was going to happen next. And I just kind of turned and tentatively walked back to where the trail intersected the main trail that we took in. And I looked to my right, and then I looked to my left, And down about 50 feet down the trail, and it was well orchestrated. There was a gap somewhere up in the canopy that illuminated the trail right in front of this big tree, and this tall, hairy shape, we later determined to be about 12 foot tall, 10 to 12 foot tall, stepped out from behind the tree, massive shoulders, body. It tapered down. I mean, he wasn't fat, but he was bulky and like a Arnold Schwarzenegger, about 12 feet tall, just even bigger, big, thick neck, kind of a conical shape. Look, the classic artist illustration of a Bigfoot, And he was stood out, looking right at me. I couldn't see his eyes, but I could see the dark recessed, eye portion. There was a 2/3 moon out, but I got a clear look at him. And he was doing this. He was swaying from one foot side to side. I don't know the significance of that, but Arla said, "Do you see him? He's down the trail there." I said, "Yeah, I see him. He's right there by that big tree, and he's swaying." And the moment I related that to Arla, she said, "Sway with him." Again, I've never been explained the significance of that, but I matched the back and forth sway that he was doing. And the moment I started doing that reciprocation move, I could hear crackling and movement really close. And I looked to my right, and again, through a gap in the canopy, a male, very, thick chest, but I'm 6 feet tall. I don't remember looking up to him or looking down. Our eye level was about the same. He was about 6 feet, but every bit of 350 or 400 pounds. He was massive, shorter. And then when he popped up, my jaw dropped open. I'm gawking at him because I'd never seen anything like this that close. Getting a good clear view of him, and he's getting a good, we're both just jaws open. And then I see movement, and a young female, obviously female, steps out from behind the tree, the same distance on the trail. And then behind her is an 8-foot figure that I couldn't really see real well. They weren't really in the moonlight real well. And I'm assuming that was Mom, a family group. Being a parent and now a grandparent, I sensed that, I came to the realization that the alpha male and maybe the mother back there were allowing their juveniles or adolescents, whatever, the young, to be up close to me. Which I take as I wouldn't let my kids or my grandkids get close to anything dangerous. They were extending or showing trust that they were allowing their young. All of my fear and apprehension vanished in a minute. I became very giggly and laughing, and I was enjoying it for just a little bit until I noticed in front of the young female on the trail I could pick out movement, but the tall brush was not allowing the moonlight to really illuminate them well, but I could pick out a little head bobbling. I would estimate maybe 3 foot tall, not any larger than 3 foot. And I'm looking down at it now, and the head kind of bobbled around, and then it turned towards me, and I could see its little head tilt up and look at me. And it didn't hesitate. It bolted towards me like a little toddler and started running towards me with its little arms up. My laughing suddenly turned to terror again because, folks, having these things close, the atmosphere is almost electrically charged. It's almost dizzying, overwhelming. And then to have a little hairy one latch on to me, I don't know if my heart would have taken it. I didn't. My biggest fear was I wasn't sure the little one knew who I was, and as it got closer, it might cry out in fear, and then Big Daddy would charge down that trail and break me in half. That was the biggest fear, but I didn't really want to. I don't know what I would have done. I just kind of froze. Fortunately, the young female lunged forward and got the toddler when it was probably 2 to 3 feet away from me, and she pulled it back to her. And at that point, I said, "Arla, I'm through." I didn't say it, "Don't let the little one get me," but look, having them close was really intense, but I wasn't ready for one to touch, latch on to me. As we turned and moved out, it never did I smell any foul odor. They were very courteous. Other than the little one, they maintained their position and gave me a good, clear look at them. As we were leaving, I turned back, and the big alpha male cocked his head back and gave out the most perfect barred owl call. Kind of had his lips, and by the way, you see some native totem figures that have the same pose to it. They got the circular mouth and they're. But I saw him with my own eyes, and somebody hearing it from a distance might think, oh, that's a barred owl. But up close, it sounded like it was coming out of 10 JBL woofers. I mean, the resonance was not anything like an 8-pound bird. And yeah, he cut loose with that, and I have since, on multiple occasions, and have audio of it. I don't know. I was in Kentucky, and I was hearing voices out there. I was with another group, a BFRO group, and I walked off in the woods, and I said, look, I can hear you out here. There's a group of people here, but just give me a little sign that you know who I am. And it wasn't a couple minutes, I got the big barred owl call. Scared a couple of them, but I've had them do that on multiple occasions with groups. I don't debate the people saying, well, I did on one occasion, but I've heard that before. It's a common call that I have observed. After the alpha male gave it the owl call, and we broke out of the cover, went back through the fence, and then came back over to the group, they had heard the owl call. I was gushing. I mean, I was saying, look, man, there was a whole family back there. And I said it was only maybe 5 or 10 minutes. The group goes, no, you all were back there over 30 minutes. The time frame did not match. I don't understand it, but I thought we were there 5 or 10 minutes. They said, no, you were inside there for over 30 minutes. I don't have any explanation for that. I have talked with other people that sometimes the time frame is not what you perceive. I don't remember anything else going on back there, but I thought everybody would believe me. But my thinking changed a whole lot. It was then that I started with Choctaw, with the Cherokee, making contact with the native side of me that up until that point. I'll back up. My mother was born during the Depression in Indian Territory in northeastern Oklahoma, had a hard life. My grandmother died when she was 4 due to malnutrition and poor health care. My mother was passed from pillar to post and different relatives. She had a hard life, and growing up, she didn't enrich us on our Cherokee heritage that much. I remember going to my aunt and uncles and them talking in the kitchen, and me coming in as just a young guy, and I'm looking at them and trying to figure out what they're talking about. And they looked down at me and laughed and said, we're talking your grandmother's language. Okay, they were talking Cherokee to one another. But I started going back to my Cherokee roots. I made contact with the tribal members and garnered information not only from the Cherokee but other native nations. And it surprises me. It's not a big deal with the native people. They've never compared these subjects to an animal. Never have. And I guess I got my head screwed on straight in my thoughts and relation to them, and it's been very successful. It works for me. I can't say it'll work for anybody else, but I've never felt threatened. I've never been hit yet, although I've told people that are with me, do not make a quick move one direction or another, because you might walk right into something that's already been tossed, and it's going to hit you. If you maintain your position and move slowly, I don't think you have anything to worry about. Now, if you're out there agitating or threatening them, you might get hit. I don't know, but I myself, the only time I've ever been growled at was in southeastern Oklahoma, where a group attempted to harvest a specimen. They like to make it sound very cosmetically appealing, but they attempted to harvest a specimen. One of the subjects were hit. They did find blood, and that area was less than a mile from where we were. And we came in there a month or two after the fact and got growled at. So, my advice to anybody that thinks they're going to take one out and get the bounty or whatever is rewarded, consider the collateral damage. You might expose a landowner or an innocent third party to retaliation if you injure or kill one of them. They may come back and take out a person you never knew existed. Collateral damage could be devastating. It's something to consider. That's just a little side, pet peeve with me when I was growled at. But after that happened, I had a paradigm shift in my thinking. I sought answers. Who are these subjects? And I know a lot of people are not. They don't relate to the Bible. It's been a pretty good book for me, even when I wasn't following stuff like I should. As a little qualifier, in my 60s here in California, played in a rock band, was headed for prisoner of the grave through different substances and everything, and God got a hold of me and basically told, you need to turn or you're going to burn. Very self-destructive behavior. My uncle was a Hell's Angel. My parents, I came from a broken home, and the Creator got my attention, and I made a great shift there. Well, I just threw that in there because I went back to the Bible looking for answers, and lo and behold, 6th chapter of Genesis talks about an angelic host, or call them angels or fallen angels. They took women, earthly women, for wives, and giants were produced. I feel that these subjects are a hybrid human with a spiritual entity on the other side of them, a mix of DNA. And, it's kind of surprising scientifically. The DNA has shown the mitochondrial from mother is 100% human. The nuclear that comes from the dad, they don't have any type match in the gen banks. And I know I'm jumping way ahead, but that's something I kind of threw in there, and I'm kind of wandering there. But getting back to my paradigm shift, I began to treat these subjects as, when I would visit, it'd be just like visiting anybody, anywhere. It's their home, it's their land, and respect for them and their land is what really has fueled my success with them. It's been I mean, you can look on my Facebook page and see all of the videos and stuff that I've been able to obtain, and it's through simple respect, no fear, and they're not an animal. They're a subject with intellect, cognitive thinking, and humor. I was in again Honeby, 2 other mixed native blood men, and I've got pictures. I don't think I shared that with you, but I've got one in a tree. I called him the fire control officer. He's watching us through the fork of a tree, and it was almost a game, like where are the objects coming from? And we would kind of see the roll into the fire, and we'd say, oh yeah, that's back to the left. When we would come to that conclusion, the objects would come from either a 90-degree angle or a 180-degree angle. It was like, guess where we are, and so I'm standing there trying to get a good thermal, and I did get a side peeker at about 100 yards, but nothing close. And one of the guys was sitting in his chair collecting the rocks, the sticks, the broken branches, and he got up when one object came rolling in, and he goes, "Can't you guys throw this any closer so I don't have to get up, and pick it up?" And within 5 seconds, folks, I heard the distinct thud. I looked down in his chair, the folding cloth chair, and there's a quarter-size rock placed perfectly in the center of his chair. I can't tell you, I couldn't see him within 50 feet. The accuracy, it's incredible how well they can throw. I was told that if you go visit them, they'll come visit you. And strange things, not dangerous, but maybe annoying. I couldn't even say annoying. I'll just tell you a couple. I have no logical explanation. We had a downburst there at the house, and about 100 feet of our wooden fence just folded over like cards. It snapped the posts at ground level, and that's back before everybody was using metal poles. It was the wooden post. So I went in and sunk metal posts, and I replaced about 100 feet of our backyard. Had over 300 and something linear feet, not by no means inexpensive, very expensive. And I had replaced that, and it had not been long after that. I come home, and I parked my pickup in the back driveway by the garage, but we had a cul-de-sac out in front, about nearly a half acre, big oversized lot. And I pulled up, and my wife was in the passenger seat of her car, SUV, and she goes, "Babe, one of your slats is loose on the fence." My new repair job. And I used decking screws, okay? 6 of them, two, and two on the rails. It wasn't like just hammering. And to get those decking screws out, you need a power drill. They're in there. And I walked over, and there was one screw left in that one slat, and it was just blowing in the wind. Somebody or something took 5 of those screws out. And I went down the fence, and there were 4, 2, 3 here. There was about 20 or 25 screws missing out of the fence. Now, who would I have no logical explanation. I had to go back and put screws back in, okay? My wife's car that she drove, we had 3 vehicles at that time. It was a Chevy Malibu, and I was moving it, and I heard water, okay? And I stopped the car. I was, reparking it, and I'm thinking, man, I'm looking down and nothing there. And I look in the back seat, and that car was locked. It had an alarm on. It hadn't rained. There was no reason for water to be in her car. And there was about 4 inches of water in the passenger's floorboard. The rug was floating. I'm just telling you what happened, okay? We had stuff moved, big, large stones in our front yard. They were moved around. And I asked somebody, I said, "Why is this odd stuff happening?" And they said, "Well, I'm not sure, but, have you been?" Where my first sighting occurred was about 12 miles from the house. And they said, "Look, you're going to visit them. They're coming to visit you." Something tried to dig in where my 2 dogs, and they're big retriever mix, they're not small dogs, tried to burrow under the fence. Now, I don't know if this was the big guys or what, but I put a cattle charger wire because one of the male out of the pair liked to dig out. Whatever tried to dig under there got a hold of that cattle charger wire and stopped their digging endeavors into my yard. I had stuff, anyway, that other weird stuff. My wife, who is not a believer, she's neutral. She knows I'm not a liar. She's seen eye shine, heard him growl, various things. But she said, "Babe, what's going on around here?" Well, I put up a Moultrie game cam and a 24/7 security system, and most of the stuff stopped. Okay, most of the weird stuff stopped around the house. But one night in December of 2013, I had planted a row of cedar trees along the east side of our lot because there's a vacant field and a lot of cedar trees, and some of those 4-wheel drivers think my yard was an extension of the field, and I didn't appreciate them coming across my lawn and, to get to the cul-de-sac. So I planted these trees as a barrier, and I was out there watering. They were fairly new. I'd started before dark. It was after dark, shortly before 6. When I finished watering the line of trees, I dropped the hose. But while I was out there, folks, at times I felt like I was being watched because of that vacant field with cedar trees. And we had heard a couple of strange noises or calls coming from that direction at various times. I didn't go out and investigate, but I was walking back to turn the faucet off, and right about the time I got to the walkway, porch to my left, I thought an owl or a nighthawk or a crow flashed by me. It was fast, it was dark, I could actually hear the wind, the whoosh. I played softball all my life, and I'd estimate the speed to be a moderate throw to first base as it went by me, and it was a whoosh to it, and it was dark, and I dodged, and then I looked maybe to see a bird flying away in the dim street light and a neighbor's light. I didn't see anything flapping away. I didn't see anything. So I just brushed it off, went over and turned the faucet off, rolled up the hose. And had I have checked my Motory game cam within a week, it wouldn't have been overwritten on the main, 24/7 security system. It was 2 weeks later that I checked the Motory game cam, and I was flashing through the pictures and deleting, and I came to this picture, and there's this dark, long-haired thing flashing by me. It clicked right when that subject was passing by me, and at first I'm going, what is this? And then it came back to me. It was that night that I had that dark shape flash by me. And I've shown the picture to a lot of people. I've had Native Americans say it's shadow people. I don't know, but it's got long hair, and it was moving at a high rate of speed. And I got the game camera picture, caught it as it was going by. I'm 6 feet, about 240 pounds, and it wasn't much bigger than me, I guess. It was within, it could have easily slapped me, and I wouldn't have been able to do nothing or anything. I've had that happen to me before out in the field where I have seen a dark flash go by. Just it's a blur. Not often, but I've had it several times since then. On night vision that's Kentucky too, different time. We were out there, and we had a tree break. One of the people went towards the tree break, and I caught 2 individuals out. There was a cemetery next door, okay? And a portion of my video clip, one of them takes off, and it's just a blur, I mean, like fast. And rock throwing in southern Missouri, I've gotten some on night vision video, thermal, moving again very fast. I don't understand all that. I don't understand all their abilities. Probably the biggest shift, and this is before I had the thermal video, I was in East Texas, Shelby County. It's on the back side of the hill, or of the one I show you up in the tree. Where they are, there's a logging road behind that hill that they're on. And we were there by the side of the road camping, and there was 3 of us. And I had just a regular camera with like 52x. It was pretty good. You could zoom in from a long way off. And one of the guys, we were sitting in our chairs. It was about 9 or 10 in the morning. It's a kind of a gravel road, no dark asphalt, not anything dark in color, and the sun was not up high to get the thermal heat coming off of it. It wouldn't anyway. That type of surface really wouldn't have issued a lot until maybe later at noon or later. And one of the guys was sitting in the chair. He said, "Rick, I've got a belly crawler about 200 yards down the road." And he pointed it out. I could see the little berm. He said, "I've been seeing his head poke up." So I hurried up and got my camera set up and zoomed into that location. And I said, walk down there and I'll keep videoing. And this subject will have one of two choices. They can jump up and run, or they can stay there and let you walk up and see them. It's, kind of a catch-22 for them. And so he started walking down the road, and I'm panned away from him, and then you can see him walking, and I pan a little, kind of take him out of the picture where I'm looking at the subject. It was about 200 yards. When that man that was with me got about 100 yards away, it looked like kind of one of those science fiction films where you've got this gate and the light starts bending and wavering, kind of like heat coming off a hot road. But I could see the flickering on my camera, so I panned to the left to catch the associate walking, and I pan all the way over to the other side of the road, and I'm looking at my monitor, and I can't pick him up. But if I looked up with the naked eye, I could see him there, but he wasn't showing up on the camera. It was just the flickering, and you can hear me going, I'm asking the guy with me, I'm going, where is so-and-so? He said, he's right there. And he had that sense of foreboding or, sick stomach or getting zapped. He turned back around. Well, I repositioned the camera and he comes back into view. Yes. Now, I never lost visual sight, but he was masked off the camera video, and that freaked me out. Those were things that I wasn't expecting. Another one in that location, those two individuals went down and made about a half-mile loop in the woods. I stayed in camp cutting firewood, and right in the middle between cuts, I wasn't using a chainsaw, I was using a battery sawzall. They're pretty loud, but it cuts wood pretty good. I was through between two cuts on a pause. It was the most perfect elk bugle. I mean, exactly like elk's bugle, and it was like 20 feet away in a little grove of trees. Well, number one, folks, Texas doesn't have elk, okay? But it was as loud and as clear, and I just stopped cutting. I put it down, and I'm listening and looking, and then I creep over to that grove of trees, waiting to hear hoof prints, going out of the leaves and twigs. Didn't hear anything. I scanned and went through that whole grove of trees, and there was nothing there. I don't understand that. I don't understand that at all. And there's other things that have happened that I have no answers for. I was in Kentucky with the KBRO. Charlie Raymond Charlie Raymond and his wife Lindsay. Excellent people, excellent group. And we were out in an area very active from the reports the KBRO had documented. And we were out at the end of an access road. There's only one way in, one way out. There were no vehicles back there. There wasn't anything parked. And we had set up folding chairs, probably a mile and a half hike. At the end of this rugged access road, I sat there for a while just chilling out, and then I get this unmistakable feeling of being watched, and I can sometimes tell the direction. I know where to look. That's all I can say. Is there a noise? I don't know. It's a sixth sense that something over here. And so I walked over to the side of the road. There was a field there. There's a river about 100 yards down with a tree line. And I started noticing thermal signatures moving through the gaps of the branches and trees and the tree trunks. And at some point it hit a clearing, and I could see it was tall and bipedal, very tall, walking on two legs. I couldn't say definitively, without a doubt, it was a Bigfoot, but I don't know of any NBA basketball players that'd be hanging out there, just with no light in the middle of nowhere in the woods. More likely it was a big guy, since there's been other reports. So as I'm watching him, he never would clearly break cover, but he was doing a lot of side peeking, and one of the guys there came up and asked me, he said, "What are you looking at?" And I said, "Well, there's a big guy down there watching us." And he had never seen anything like that. He goes, "Really?" I said, "Here." And I told him where to look, what direction, and he's watching. I said, "Do you see him?" And he said, "Yeah." He's peeking around to try and see his shoulder and his head. And I said, "Yep, that's him." Well, within a very short time, we could hear stirring to our right. And there was a creek that came up out of the main, or fed into the main river, about 100 feet to our right where it came by. And we could start hearing, crackling and stirring and everything. I said, "I think we're being flanked." And, you know, Kentucky, Tennessee, northern Georgia, Alabama, western Virginia, and western North and South Carolina, that was all original Cherokee land. And I've already, I guess, talked about the Uni Udawahi, the forest, people that they interacted with. I've always wanted to experiment with speaking with them in Cherokee, and I'd made several other attempts. I wasn't sure if I got a reply, but this time I wanted to see if they would understand and respond in Cherokee. And I know my Cherokee's got an English accent. I do my best. I love my grandmother's language and everything. I wanted to get a response and experiment here. We were out there at the end of the access road. And I told the guy there watching the big guy, I said, "Watch him and see if he does anything." And I looked over to my right where the stirring was real close, and I went, "Gata uste, dejido." I'm asking him, "What is your name?" And nothing. I said, "Did he do anything?" And he said, "No, he's still watching." I said, let me try it again. And I said, "Gata uste, dejido." More emphasis, and this time, about 5 seconds after that statement, I hear a claw, which, and it was just as emphasized. It's no in Cherokee. So, I don't know anybody there that would hide out and know no in Cherokee, but yeah, I got a response of, "No, I'm not going to tell you." I mean, he didn't go into a long dialogue. He just, one expression was claw, no. So I thought that was pretty exciting. I've told him we're friends. We're not here to hurt you. That type of stuff. And I warmly speak to them, and I'm not afraid. I was with a group in another section of Kentucky, and I was thermal. There was one up on the hill. Another person with the thermal saw him too. They were building a stick structure or something. The land, you could not navigate it in the daytime. It was that steep. And that subject was moving around up there like it was nothing. I would have probably had the hands and knees and everything. They were still upright and moving up and down, having no problems on the steep hill. And they had thrown some rocks at a couple ladies earlier, didn't hit them, but it hit the water. And I got there and they talked, and I saw it up there. But that subject, I tried to instill something from them, and didn't get a reply there. But I did try Cherokee there. But it was he did throw a rock later, or that was before. Again, didn't get hit, but I just enjoy hanging out and watching their reaction. They're very interesting, very intriguing. I don't have all the answers, but if you respect their position, my advice to anybody is they're not a dumb animal. They possess intellect, cognitive thinking, extremely intuitive. And I know there's been some people for the better part of this decade that have tried to harvest a specimen with no success. My only warning is if you do injure or kill one, number one, you don't know who else is in the forest. Number two, they are extremely accurate with things that they throw. And the retaliatory strike might be 100-mile-an-hour fastball upside your head that you never saw coming. I know in British Columbia there's been substantial number of hunters that have disappeared, and some of which they suspect might be the result of the big guys. If anybody thinks they're going to go in there and take one out, I don't think it's safe. I don't think it's a sound way of thinking. And people have the right to their choices and opinions, but me personally, I don't think it's a very good idea to even think of harming one of these subjects. I think, me personally, our technology has gotten us into a point of almost no return on altering the environment. Um, I think they can teach us how to live uh, better with nature rather than destroying it. Um, they are extraordinary, but I think a respect for the land and for other people um, make it a better place. Yeah, we like our cars, we like our conveniences, but we're destroying uh, the country, the land, and their habitat. Um, More and more of their areas, just like the one video of the one up on the hill there that I stabilized and enhanced a little bit. That whole area is clear cut now. It's gone, and it's stuff like that. I went back there to follow up several years later, and it's all just it's coming back. It will regrow. There's a cycle to it, but it was clear cut. So it destroyed their habitat, forcing them to move, and I don't think that's a good thing. I don't have any advice. I do know, talking with government officials, the government's aware of their existence. I've seen the dark SUVs shadowing us at several locations, helicopters there observing in certain areas. Um, Even had friends. Now I haven't been warned, but I've had friends warned by forest officials that it would be in your best interest to leave this area. I don't know what the payoff is there. I don't know what the connection is, but I think there's portions, maybe not all of the federal government, there's portions of the federal government that know about these, and I just don't know what the payoff is to prevent the general public from knowing they exist. I don't know. In two instances of my field research, I have documented, I've captured it in one instance on thermal video. The first time was in near Boggy Depot, Oklahoma, back about 2012, 2011, 2012. I'd have to look. I don't write these things down and I'll claim a senior moment, but I'll give you approximate time frame. I was with a active federal law enforcement officer who has been very instrumental in helping me understand this phenomenon, and a college professor. We were on homestead land that had remained in the family for a couple of generations, with extensive Bigfoot activity, a history of it. And we were out conducting field research, and I was videoing a eye shine of what later turned out to be, she was about 8 foot tall, appears to be a lady or female, in front of that subject moving, which also had eye shine, or my enhanced video looked like they may have had night vision scopes too, or these little approximately 3 foot high bubble-headed alien looking things creeping up close and watching me. I don't know what their intentions were, but had they come much closer, I might have been subject to bust a cap or two. I don't know. I don't know what their intention was. But on that same location, above us in the trees were these delta-shaped lights in a triangle shape. Looked like Christmas tree lights flashing around the perimeter of them. And when I made the statement to the people with me, I don't know if they were little lights up close or big lights further up, but they positioned behind, they actually blocked their view from me. And I can send you the clip from the night vision. You can hear me in my voice, we got lights. I mean, I'm freaking out that I'm seeing these lights. I've seen that on maybe a half dozen instances, not the little bubble-headed things, but the lights in the sky over an area where I'm documenting Bigfoot activity. I don't know what it means. I don't know what the connection is. I'm just telling you what I observed. I have no final conclusions, but that was in 2011 or 2012. In 2018, Daniel Boone National Forest, Southern Missouri, totally different group, totally different time, and on a remote access road. I was with about 8 or 10 individuals, and I call it an access road. It was a rugged trail. It was supposed to be a fire access road that hadn't been maintained in forever and was washed out. And we got back there, and we were stopped at a location to kind of take a break from our walking. We were in a line. The lady next to me was using a parabolic mic, scanning the tree and vegetation line. And she said, Rick, she says, I'm hearing something. I said, where? She said, about 45-degree angle from me. And we were both facing, perpendicular to the road, so I had a pretty good idea. I'm standing next to her. I know where to look. And I didn't see the subject at first. In the first part of my video clip, it hides, it crawls kind of like a spider down on, it's not standing erect. It's kind of down in the weeds. It goes around the back of the tree and hides. Now, I didn't notice it then because my mind said I'm in the black hot mode, okay? I'm looking for a dark figure peeking around a tree, upright and above. I wasn't looking down at, low to the grass line. And then later, I'm thinking of the time frames on my FLIR video. I want to say a couple, 3 minutes later, I notice it. And at first, I thought it might be a big sunflower or something. The reason being, I was in the black hot mode. So anything issuing heat, like the tree trunk, a rock, they're showing up either a charcoal, light gray, or dark, depending on the heat, intensity. This thing was issuing a cold signature. I was looking for a dark signature, and that's why I had overlooked this subject for a little while. And when I saw it, my first thought, it's a flower. It's something that is not holding the heat. And then I saw it move, and I could see the arms and the bubble head. And I started changing color palettes. I switched to the white hot mode, and the subject turned dark. This thing is not issuing any heat. Now, my night vision wouldn't measure heat, but the subject there was cold, but it matched the same appearance of the ones that I had, 6 years ago in another location. The person down the row had a thermal. I said, hey, Andrew, I said, come here. And I told him where to look. I said, do you see that? He goes, yeah. And I said, what do you think it is? He said, I don't know. And I said, do you want to go over there and take a closer look? And he goes, no. He goes, no. And I wasn't wanting to go over there alone. I mean, I'm not a wimp, but if I don't know what something is, I'm not gonna, it's like a little kid saying, is that hot? Here, let me, I only had that one time find out what hot meant, I don't, it might be hot, so I didn't, and so we moved on. Nobody wanted to, but in two instances, I've seen these little bubble-headed subjects that are hanging around out in the wooded areas. And I've talked to other people that have seen other things, other cryptids. I don't care about Mothman, or I don't care about Dogman. I've heard those, reports. I'm not interested. I've seen the big guys, And if there's anything else out there, just count me out. I really don't want to expand this. You know, there's so many people just believing in Bigfoots are really hard for them to believe. I was born and raised here in California. I have spent countless hours in the Sierra Nevada mountains, and I was of the mindset if there was anything out there, I should have seen it. Which a lot of people carry that. Okay, that's my evidence. They're not out there because I've been out there. But I can look back and I can remember we were up in the Carson Iceberg Wilderness with my in-laws, hardcore hunters. I mean, you're not pulling to the side of the road and just hunting. You're going to backpack about 7 miles over a pass, and whatever you carry on your back is what you sleep, eat, and wear. I mean, you're bringing in everything on your back, and at 11,000 feet is one of the hardest things I ever did. My pack was very ignorantly 90 pounds, and I thought I was in great shape until I fell to the back of the pack. And we finally got in there, and my in-laws said, "We didn't think you'd get that pack in here." And I said, "I'll tell you another thing. I'm never going to do this again." It was tough. 11,000 feet carrying 90 pounds on your back up steep way. But we were out there, and I remember one night after my brother-in-law had gotten one deer, it sounded, to my opinion, was a very sick cow, a very moaning call. And all of my experienced woodsmen there, I said, "What is that?" I remember this, and this was before my time in the creek, and back to thinking, I wasn't even thinking Bigfoot. But I remember asking them, I said, "Man, that is not a cow." And they were drinking their coffee and just not, it wasn't profound enough to get all of those experiences. They said, "I don't know," and they didn't care. The next day, I went up the ridge there, and this is in the Carson Iceberg Wilderness, right off the John Muir Trail. Not somewhere you're going to pull over and just, you gotta pack in there. I was going up this hill, and my intent was, I didn't have a California out-of-state tag, confession, but my in-law, said, "Look, if you get a good shot on a deer, take it and we'll tag it." Okay, but I didn't shoot a deer, so I didn't. No violation, but I did. I was quasi hunting. I came up upon a doe that had been freshly killed. We had never heard shots. At the time, I assumed she had been gut shot, bad shot, because there was a hole in her sternum. Pretty good size hole, but there was no exit hole. And I'm looking at the deer carcass saying, okay, how'd this hole in the sternum get there? And the thing that really got my attention was both of her back legs were broke. 90-degree break, and there wasn't a rock, there wasn't anywhere for her to fall. She had two back legs broke and entrails pulled out of her sternum, and it was a fresh kill. Now, to this day, I can't tell you definitively, but I've heard Bigfoot will cripple a deer, break their legs, and come back later to finish their meal. We did find a couple ambush points, looked like big bathtub rocks along some of the game trail where something big would hunker down off the game trail and observe. It'd make a good ambush point. But after I found that deer, I got up into an area that I considered a good ambush point, and I just observed probably a dozen doe, and none of us had an antlerless tag, so it had to be a buck. Maybe a couple yearlings and everything. At some point, I remember the hair standing up on my neck and the feeling of being watched, and I thought maybe a mountain lion or a predator was fixing to pounce me. I'm in a good ambush point, but I got to looking around in the rocks, and I could have been ambushed. It was so intense, I spun around, I pulled my pistol out, cocked it single action, and dropped against a rock so nothing could get behind me. And then I scooted along the rock back to where I could get out of that, confined area. And when I hit the ground, I remember running with that pistol expecting to be attacked. I just know it was a sense of foreboding or something. Was it a Bigfoot? I don't know, but uh, the next year my in-laws were camping in that same area, and about noontime they had hunted that morning. They'd come back to their camp in tents and take a nap for the evening hunt. A large tree fell over about 100 yards from camp, scared the daylights out of them. You know, they said it sounded like a herd of buffalo coming, but, you know, could it have fallen just inadvertently, you know, at that one particular time out of all of the hours and days? I don't know, but they told me, they said, man, a tree fell over right outside of camp and scared the daylights out of them, you know. I have been there when they pushed over trees. I was in Oklahoma, and I'm sure you people have had this. Anybody that follows Bigfoot, if you get in a big public gathering, and it was with good taste. They weren't being real malicious, but they brought up me and my Bigfoot studies, and I got to talking about my interest and experiences now. This is in Oklahoma, Beavers Bend area of southeastern Oklahoma, Beavers Bend Park. I got about 30 people here, none of which really believe in Bigfoot. But while I'm talking, just 50 yards outside of camp, a big, huge oak tree splits in half. And it sounded like a car coming through the woods. A couple people jumped up and started running. I'm talking about Bigfoot, and like 50 yards away, half of a big oak tree starts cracking and breaking and hitting the ground. And I didn't find any rotten, rot to cause that oak tree. Here I'm talking about Bigfoot, and that happens. It was funny. After it fell, about half of the people there were they were looking over at me like, I mean, it was kind of profound for them. But I have fun, folks. I enjoy it. They live and walk among us. I don't have any of all the answers, but I'm sure enjoying the ride.